All right, this is like my third video today. I have the house to myself. This is the reason I'm inspired to like make videos and hope somebody will watch it because I have the house to myself, so I can freely chill in the living room and let loose on any topic. Um, my landlords that I rent a room from are on vacation, so uh, I got a little privacy for now. I'm not sure how long they're gone, but um, anyway, I just let's see. I mean, what's going on? I just wanted to talk about. Well, I study infernology, so I study like the underworld traditions of, everywhere, like of the Asians, Africans, Europeans, North Americans, South Americans, um, and uh, so I figured out, or no, I didn't figure out. I learned from the from Indians, from Hindus, that the underworld is America. I mean, the way they said it, like Patala, which is, they said we call Patala the underworld because it's where the sun goes at night. So once I understood that, I figured since Patala basically has the same characteristics as Hades or Hell or Sheol or Kur or Duat or any of these other Afro-Eurasian underworlds, it must be based on the same thing. And although actually a lot of the American underworld traditions are very similar as well, but basically they're all antipodal, so they all refer to whatever's on the opposite side of the planet. Um, and there's a kind of mix of the genuinely antipodal tradition and the east-west tradition, where the underworld is to the west because that's like uh, the ecliptic, something elliptic. I don't know. Basically, it's the underworld for the trajectory of the celestial bodies. Um, so, but I always knew, or I knew for a long time, that the underworld was supposed to be like the unifying concept in Western or in global like human culture. I was familiar with Joseph Campbell's work. I mean, my middle name is Campbell. My mother's maiden name is Campbell. So um, I was always, Joseph Campbell, of course, like stuck out to me even more than other people in the sense of like being potentially a relative and being of Scotch Irish ancestry. And so, and like my sister went to Sarah Lawrence College. Um, so that's where he taught. And I visited her there. I stayed there for like a month once. And I spent a lot of the time in the tea house there, which is reported to be like reputed to be have been Joseph Campbell's office when he was there. I'm not sure if that's really true or not, but anyway, I hotboxed that place a lot with the people there. And I remember I was reading some old book about the Greeks and Persians, The Wars of the Greeks and Persians or something from the Sarah Lawrence Library. But like I also read, so I'm not sure if I've ever read like a Joseph Campbell book like all the way through. I may have done like originally when I was first getting into him. I know like I had a biography, either bought or was given a biography of him, but it was like a huge book and I ended up not finishing it. But anyway, like he was a big focus of mine when I was younger, but I never really could figure him out because like I understood like yeah, okay, he found these things that are found in a lot of different stories. Um but I think partly through maybe partly by his own confusions, but probably more through the confusions of his minions and the people who claim to be following in his footsteps and who basically misportray him. I never really understood like I, yeah, I never really understood it. It's like the monomyth. He calls it the monomyth, and he says it's about the descent to the underworld, the hero's journey, and it's this universal thing like that um, is in every culture. And I think like a lot of people that claim to be his disciples of sorts, they act like that they put all their focus on his kind of psychological ideas that of the idea that the monomyth is psychologically universal. And I think they ignore all the ways in which he viewed the monomyth as being cultural as well and having historical basis. Um, and maybe a historical diffusion uh, from some original point. So, like, and the focus on the underworld, like, it just seems strange to me, like I couldn't make head or tails of it. I kind of stayed away from it to an extent just because I thought like, well, why focus on the underworld? Um, from what I could Google easily, it was just saying, oh, the underworld is either a place of torment or at best it's like a dark and dreary place um, underground. So it's like, why, what, I must not be human because I don't have this supposed universal human desire to focus on some dark and dreary place. Um, but then yeah, so then once I learned from the Hindus that I was in touch with through my archaeology on Facebook and learned that actually the underworld is America, then it quickly made perfect sense. Like, okay, of course this motif had staying power because it's about a real place. And I'm not sure about Campbell himself. I think he was a lot smarter than his own supporters really give him credit for when they describe his ideas. But at least, yeah, most of the people who claim to be following him, um, I think are wrong because they use it as this idea to say like, okay, that all these things are universal. The monomyth, the underworld is just universal psychologically. Like if you're just a human, you just naturally want to tell stories about the underworld and traveling to the underworld and then returning. And yeah. So that's what I don't think that's necessarily what Campbell himself said. I think Campbell viewed it as much more of a cultural and historical thing than his modern pseudo followers do. But but yeah, the fact is, it was a place, and the reason that everything with all the gods were always going there is because that's just where they go. Like most of the gods are like planets and stars. Like the gods, I think basically the concept of a god tended to mean immortal. There's the mortals and the gods. So everything that's immortal is a god. So like the sun, the moon, the planets, the stars, land masses. But like most of the gods, most of the key gods are planets and the sun and moon. And so they obviously, you know, cross the sky every day or night. And they uh, come from the underworld. They rise up from the underworld in the east, and then they descend back to the underworld in the west. So the underworld was naturally seen as the home of the gods, but in other stories, it was seen as naturally the afterlife place because it's like they're dying in the horizon and the sunset, and then the sun is like dying and going to the underworld. But also that it's just this great destination land, and it's the land of rebirth because it's where the sun is reborn each morning. Um, but it's also just literally the only place they go. It's the only place they come from, but it's also the only place that the celestial deities go. So I mean, when you're talking about celestial deities, um, like in the Norse pantheon, celestial deities would be like Zeus, would be like sun and moon are both, sun is a goddess and moon is a god that's like the brother of sun or something. And but then there's like Thor is Jupiter, like, I mean, what is it? Like the weekdays, there's Tuesdays, Tyr from basically Mars. Wednesday is Woden, Odin, which is Mercury. Thursday is Thor's day, which is Jupiter. Friday is Frigg's day, which is Venus. Saturday is Saturn, which is probably Loki in the Norse pantheon, called Lager Day or something in some Norse languages. Um, so like those are all the main gods for the most part, and they're all celestial. And so where do they go? Their final destination is always the underworld, because where else, that's their course. They go west in the sky, just like the sun, just like the moon, and that's where they go. So like it's natural that because almost all stories in ancient times that have come down to us are about the gods, you know, and even the stories that are supposedly about humans are framed in are so blended into the stories of the gods and the mythologies of the gods that it's pretty much indistinguishable, like, Gilgamesh or something like that, or King Arthur, where it's all interwoven with the mythology, so that most of the things are not like factual historical things. They're based on the stories of the gods. So like, it's just natural that it's always going to be about going to the underworld. If like stars, if somehow the earth were flat and stars just and planets, which are stars in the original sense, like stars originally meant like um everything in the sky basically. um if they all just went, I don't know, went into some other place instead of like going down into the underworld, if they just like we were just on some flat surface and we would just like rotate it so that they, went to some galaxy or something, then probably all of our stories would be about that galaxy because we'd be writing about the gods, which are the planets and the sun and moon. And then we, and even, all the stars basically, other than some of the fixed stars that maybe just don't ever um, go down under, they don't ever set. But most of the stars, every star that does set, that does go below the horizon at any point, is basically going west. So everything's going to the underworld. So anyway, it makes sense why like all these shows on Netflix are like about the underworld. I'm even watching this show Lock and Key, which is clearly like inspired by infernological concepts of like underworld gateways and like secret entrances to those gateways. Um, it's like in the Bible, it says that the Messiah will hold the keys to Hades and death. So Hades being America. This is why Columbus used that line from Revelations to claim that he was the Messiah, which he is good at one as any in that ridiculous system. But yeah, like I watched a show called The Magicians, was largely about the underworld under various names. Fillory. I mean, Fillory seemed to be a mix of underworld stuff and Narnia and Wonderland, but Narnia and Wonderland were both very much seem to have been based on underworld stuff. Through the down the rabbit hole is very underworldy. But yeah, like what other shows like Stranger Things, so basically about infernology, about the underworld under another name, the Upside Down, where gravity is of course upside down in the underworld. Dark, there's this one called Dark that's about infernology. Charmed, which is funny, it has the same logo. That's has a lot of underworld stuff. Even like He-Man and She-Ra, I was watching on Netflix, and a lot of it is directly from Underworld. They're going to the Underworld. It's either thinly disguised or not at all. Not really sure how to find them on Netflix. I'm trying to see. Oh yeah, there's the Magicians, The Order, Legacies. I watch like every kind of magical thing, Merlin, and they're all about the underworld. And it's like well acknowledged that like fiction writers and like fantasy writers lean on the underworld